From a business perspective, one of the things we've done in response to the pandemic is to cut down our pricing. We reduced our prices by 50 cents per clone, and hopefully this will help offset some of the initial investment needed to get started.
That's Lindsay Dawley from Almanac Planting Co in Berks County, Pennsylvania, where they've got greenhouses full of hemp clones ready to sell. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and I've got a nice show lined up for you today. We'll talk to Lindsay Dawley about Almanac Planting Co and what her operation is all about and how they're navigating in the age of the virus. But before we get to that, we'll talk to Kristen Nichols from Hemp Industry Daily about what folks in the hemp space can be doing now to access the financial aid that's been made available in the federal coronavirus relief program. First, we'll take a quick sponsor break and then get into a few nuggets of hemp news. This episode of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is brought to you in part by the National Hemp Association. The National Hemp Association is a nonprofit organization committed to the growth and development of all aspects of the hemp industry. Learn how the National Hemp Association can help your hemp operation. Become a member today at nationalhempassociation.org. National Hemp Association. Pushing progress. Okay, welcome back. Thanks for listening. Today is April 8th, 2020, and we're all still trying to figure out how to deal with the coronavirus and what normal is supposed to be now. I hope you and your family are safe. As I mentioned in previous weeks, I'm just going to continue on as normally as I can and focus on the hemp industry and throw in the occasional non-hemp distraction. I hope you enjoyed the mailbox market story I stuck in last week. I know this is and will continue to be a great disruption, and there will be lots of sadness, but I'm looking out for the silver linings. Anyway, here are a few nuggets of hemp news. The West Virginia Department of Agriculture has received certification of approval from the USDA for their industrial hemp plan. But this year, West Virginia farmers will continue to operate under the current rules, and the new plan will go into effect on October 31st. Hemp farmers in Alaska are now able to apply for hemp permits as of April 4th. Prospective hemp farmers must apply online at the Alaska Division of Agriculture's website. The state will also continue to operate under the 2014 Farm Bill rules. Here's a story from IcelandReview.com. Icelandic police drop charges against hemp farmers. They drop charges against the farmers in Gatavik, East Iceland, who are cultivating industrial hemp. The plant is derived from a strain of cannabis sativa, which contains low concentrations of THC, the primary psychoactive compound in marijuana. As such, the crops were reported to police by the Icelandic Medicines Agency as being in violation of current law. Following an investigation, however, police elected to drop charges, and it's likely that the government will soon remove legal barriers to hemp production, thereby allowing farmers to produce hemp for use in a range of products such as fiberboard and eco-friendly concrete. And while we're overseas, the Hemp Industry Daily reports that France, Italy, and the Netherlands are leading the pack when it comes to industrial hemp cultivation in Europe, according to the most recent data available. More than 50% of industrial hemp in Europe was planted in those three countries, and the amount planted across the continent rose 3.3% in 2018 compared to the previous year, according to a survey by the European Industrial Hemp Association. And here's a story about hemp from the Australian newspaper The Examiner. The headline is, "Hemp crops can fill gaps from poppy decline in Tasmania." So the state of Tasmania grows more than 60% of Australia's industrial hemp, with some in the industry touting it as a great alternative to poppies, offering growers an opportunity to fill the gaps where poppy production declined. Yet the state, along with the rest of Australia, is missing out on lucrative opportunities due to restrictive laws surrounding the plant. Hemp Harvest's co-founder Tim Crow built a hemp seed processing facility in Red Hills, Deloraine, which has the capacity to process up to 3,000 tons of seed per year. And he says, "Tassie is definitely leading the way in Australia, but we are constantly hindered due to the stigma that is attached to the plant, and we want legislation to reflect the evidence and the science," he said. I'll have links to these stories on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. And there will be a few other nuggets of hemp news in the interview you're about to hear with Kristen Nichols from Hemp Industry Daily. Kristen Nichols from Hemp Industry Daily, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what, you're out in Colorado?
I am in Denver, Colorado.
Okay, and how sort of like the mood and the situation out there pandemic-wise?
I think it's the same as everywhere. A lot of confusion, a lot of anxiety. Folks wondering when it's going to come. Everyone kind of knows someone. Fingers crossed. Right now, it seems like the farmers that I work with, so far, everyone's just, hoping to stay safe. But it's disrupting and concerning for everybody, and wishing everybody's safe where they are too.
Absolutely. So hemp farmers and, people in the whole hemp industry, like everybody else, are caught up in this.
Sure.
Now, there's some financial aid available. Is that available for people in the hemp space too?
Absolutely. This is a quick lesson. It's been almost 2 years since hemp was removed from the Controlled Substances Act. And we're in this crisis is really showing the advantages to being federally legal. As you know, Congress has met now, passed at least 3 rounds of assistance to help keep the economy out of free fall. None of that is an option for anybody in the marijuana space, but it is because hemp is now considered a specialty crop through the USDA. Now, that doesn't mean money falls out of the sky. I'm sure we'll talk about more about the challenges and where all this lands. But definitely, the American farmer has been designated a critical infrastructure by the USDA. No matter what you're growing, as long as it's legal, if you're a legal hemp farmer, you have a lot of options to find some assistance that your colleagues in the illicit market growing marijuana just don't.
Right. Well, what are some of those options and how can people find them?
All right. Well, the first thing to do, of course, is check with the kind of government agencies you interact with all the time. This is advice from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I think it's good advice. Start with your bank, your lender. If you are worried about making payroll, if you're worried about being able to cover a loan payment, if you're worried about, like right now is when farmers are looking for all their inputs, they're looking to buy seeds and fertilizer, and that now is when they invest in that kind of stuff. The Small Business Administration has authorized something called the Paycheck Protection Plan. That will allow you, if you have folks on your payroll, to pay them. These loans could be completely 100% forgiven. That's a place to start. The SBA, which is the Small Business Administration, what they're going to do is to send you back to your bank. So if you want to access capital right away to keep your business afloat, start with your bank and ask them about SBA loans.
Okay.
The next step I would tell folks, and this applies only, of course, if you are a licensed hemp farmer, if you're registered to grow, is to check with your county extension agent and your state Department of Ag. As people have noticed right now, this is a glitch, but things take longer to fix. Right now, this huge pot of money through the Small Business Administration, one of the questions it asks is, are you a farmer? If you are a farmer or you're in cultivation, this is not for you. Well, this is not just hemp farmers. This is whether you're growing corn or potatoes or anything, you're not eligible.
Oh, what's up with that?
Congress, as you can imagine, Congress is not happy. About 100 members of Congress have written to the Small Business Administration asking them to fix this. Here's what I'm told. It's very frustrating for people going through it. I'm not discounting how painful it is for folks who are in crisis and need the money.
Yeah.
In many crises, disaster assistance to farmers, when you think of like a disaster that affects farmers, you usually think of something like a flood or a drought. Most of those funds flow through USDA.
Okay.
So it's not intentional, and it certainly is not cannabis specific intention. We'll talk in a minute, I'm sure, about some challenges hemp folks might have that regular farmers don't. Not that hemp farmers are not regular farmers, but so right now, all farmers are just screaming bloody murder. The National Farm Bureau, American Farm Bureau has been up in arms. All the cattlemen are up in arms. dozens of members of Congress from both parties are pounding on the walls saying, let's get this fixed right away. The challenge, I think your listeners are probably experiencing, is there's a perception that right now, farmers, this is kind of their quiet time. They're just kind of making plans. They're not as put out as, say, a retailer or someone who had to close a restaurant. Certainly, farms have needs 12 months a year.
Absolutely.
They have a lot of seasonal employees they probably have not ramped up yet on. So the focus, of course, is getting folks fed and getting medicine and keeping hospitals open. But I do think this will get corrected in a matter of days, not weeks. But we have not seen Congress do anything about this glitch yet.
Okay. You mentioned some of the challenges that the folks in the hemp industry have. Can you get into some of that?
Right. Okay. So here's this. So it looks like you should be able to get an SBA loan, right? Everything on paper says you should. However, there's some little language in there that says you need to comply with the law. Well, everybody who's in a CBD business might say, of course I'm complying with the law. But if the FDA is unclear about what you're doing with CBD, like you're putting it into a tincture or something people eat, even if a skin cream, you're putting out something people put on their bodies, the FDA could say this is not authorized. We don't have authorization for anything outside pharmaceutical channels. The question, of course, and that could be a challenge. Your bank could say, we're not sure you're doing everything. We are not comfortable loaning you money. I suspect, again, we're all speculating here. I suspect the FDA has much bigger fish to fry over the next weeks and months than checking on what kinds of things you're doing with the CBD when it comes to getting an emergency assistance loan. But that's a wrinkle to consider and to talk about with your lawyer. And you may hear that from your bank if you say, "Oh, I thought I could get this loan," and the bank that already serves you and it is skittish. That might be it.
Okay. So what are some of the next steps that people in the hemp space should be thinking about?
All right. So you need to definitely be in touch right away. I mean, this is like just a kind of basic business advice. Be in touch right away with your county extension agent. Be in touch right away with anybody who you owe money. If you have had a lawyer look over any contracts, there's a little thing at the end of most contracts that you should look at. Most contracts have something that's called a force majeure clause. I don't know if that is ever, I've never heard of that before all of this. A force majeure clause is a little language at the end of most contracts that say something, it's like, consider it, people say it's act of God. Okay, there was an alien invasion and you couldn't complete this contract, it's void. This contract is void if a tornado hit you, something like that. So you should look and see if you owe someone money or someone owes you money, whether there's language like that in that contract. So I would say, first off, like any a household, a hemp business needs to find out, who do I owe money to, who owes me money, and what are my obligations right now in this time of crisis.
What other resources are available to folks in the hemp space?
Well, it's not really clear. So I was talking just a minute ago with someone about, we think about all of this assistance is coming from the feds. Is there state and even local assistance that folks can tap? And the answer is maybe, but it's hard to say. All of this stuff is less than a week old. It won't surprise you that it's not clear usually how government operates. The feds write a big check to the states then write checks to the counties who decide, that's kind of how things go. It doesn't move overnight. Mm-hmm. In this case, because there is a sense of urgency that the entire American economy could collapse if folks can't access capital absolutely right away. I do think there could be some at least attention given to local businesses, but if you call your county development office, economic development office, I would get in touch with them. The issue you're going to run into, just like the DMV, to any other government licensing thing you need, is are they open?
Right.
And who can you find to get help? So anyway, I would just say it's a tough time for businesses. There are some options available. Be confident that, at least this didn't happen in the middle of your harvest or while you had plants in the ground.
Right.
But we're a time of flux. We're in a time of crisis. I talked to somebody that said, for hemp farmers, this is the Colorado economic development guy. He said it's a crisis on top of a crisis.
Right.
Now, a lot of your guys have seen low commodity prices, weather issues last year, the CBD market kind of bottoming out. This is certainly a very painful time. There are options available, but I would say, honestly, I can't say that folks are going to get help within days or weeks.
Is there any other hemp news that's not pandemic related that we can talk about?
Oh, yes. So two things that are happening this week. The DEA said that there's a CBD drug that treats two rare types of epilepsy. It's called Epidiolex.
Epidiolex, yep.
Right? Okay. It actually doesn't come from hemp. It actually comes from marijuana, but it's a CBD drug.
Mm-hmm.
And so the FDA approves this drug a couple years ago. Then that forces the DEA to reschedule it from Schedule 1, which means no medical value. They rescheduled it to Schedule 5. Just this week, the DEA took it off the schedule entirely. That makes it a lot easier for doctors to prescribe it. You don't have to get the same kind of federal drug clearance that you do, like when you prescribe opioids or that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it really could open some more opportunity for this CBD treatment, which we're seeing broad acceptance. There was some question when Epidiolex was approved. Are doctors going to really write the scripts? Are people with sick kids really going to want to give cannabis to their kids? Or are they going to keep using the hemp treatments they've been using, not this more expensive pharmaceutical option, even though the pharmaceutical option is covered by insurance?
Right.
So they've done well. And then the DEA move this week, I think, could expand opportunities for this company. It won't surprise you, has lots of other CBD sorts of drugs in the pipeline waiting for clearance, whether this holds that. The other news that is happening this week, if you or your listeners are following, the state of Indiana has been in a fight with some hemp producers in its state over smokable hemp.
Yep.
As you may recall, so the Farm Bill says hemp is legal, but a state can decide some parameters. Indiana said, "Oh, you can't have the smokable kind." The industry says that's baloney because you can at least transport it through Indiana. You can't say you have to drive around the whole state of Indiana. And so it's been kind of a question. This is now pending in the 7th Circuit in Chicago. Just this week, Indiana again pressed their case and says this is a states' rights issue. The hemp producers say again, one state cannot. You might be able to ban growing hemp. You might be able to ban selling certain kinds of hemp, but you can't ban that this kind of hemp even exists. Think of it like a dry county. A county can ban alcohol sales, but they can't ban alcohol. Does that make sense? You can say, "Oh, we don't have bars and liquor stores," but if you have if you are over 21 and have vodka in the trunk, that's that is a constitutional right. That's not we can't say you can't do that.
Sure.
So it's a similar kind of thing. The industry is watching this 7th Circuit case very closely. There are similar, I would say, probably illegal and problematic attempts to ban smokable hemp pending in Texas, North Carolina. A lot of other states have concerns, feel like this is just, cheap, poor man's marijuana, backdoor marijuana. So I think, the higher this case raises, definitely a lot of states are watching to see that 7th Circuit in Chicago, where they land on this.
Right. Getting back to the Epidiolex story, what does that mean for the average, CBD producer?
Well, I think not, everything is kind of like a trail of crumbs to follow. How much of your business is serving people that are quite sick? A lot of CBD producers, and the most notable you think of is a company in Colorado called Charlotte's Web. Mm-hmm. A lot of companies do a lot of business selling to parents of children with rare types of epilepsy, or sell people that are, had some super sick conditions. If you are super far down the health and wellness space. I think what is interesting to watch, and I think is definitely a business interest for you, is I think if you want to be in the business of treating very sick people, I think that business is going to cede more and more to big pharma, big outfits with big investment money and running trials and, getting universities on board and those kinds of things. Not necessarily the cottage producer, the backyard producer. I think you're going to see a lot of more shakeout in coming years of either you're medical and you're kind of think of yourself like a big pharma outfit, or you're pursuing more of a kind of dietary supplement, helps you sleep, nutritional supplement, not really using CBD to treat serious health conditions.
Great. Well, Kristen Nichols, once again, it's great to talk to you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate always being here. Let me know what you're hearing.
That's Kristen Nichols from Hemp Industry Daily. I'll put some links up on the show page for this episode. Next, we're going to Berks County, Pennsylvania, and check in with Almanac Planting. Lindsay Dawley, welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, you're from Almanac Planting Company in Berks County. Can you tell us a bit about what that is?
Yeah, for sure. So just this past fall, my sister and I started Almanac Planting Company together, and we have 4 greenhouses in Berks County, and we cultivate hemp. So we started our company to become a trusted and local resource for Northeast hemp growers, specifically to provide them with clones.
Okay. Were you in the greenhouse business before this?
We weren't. This is a brand new endeavor. We were both looking to start something we could call our own, and we invested our savings into it, and this will be our first year.
Okay. Why hemp?
Why hemp? Yes, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride, especially this year. I befriended a grower in Tennessee, and seeing as how it's relatively new in the Northeast, we just saw an opportunity, especially for clones. There weren't a lot of people providing clones, and we saw value in it, and we wanted to grow it.
Okay. Can you sort of walk us through the facility? Like where do you do the cloning? Where are the plants growing? Just kind of paint a picture for me.
Yeah, sure. So like I said, we have 4 houses. So one of them is dedicated to our cherry wine mothers. The second one is dedicated to our mountain mango mothers. And the third is dedicated to our quick kush mothers. And then we have a prop house, which is where we cut all of our mothers and clone them for our clones that we sell.
How did you learn the technique of cloning?
From a grower in Tennessee that I became friends with. So he has a lot of different varieties. He's been doing it for years. They're also growers of all kinds of other plants. And he's been a really valuable resource for us throughout this.
How are the roles broken up between you and your sister? Who handles what?
So my background is in advertising in New York and Los Angeles. So I've taken on the role of all of the sales and marketing and, bookkeeping and, all of the agreements and paperwork and whatnot. And my sister, Stephanie, her day-to-day is really taking care of the plants and, fertilizing, watering, just keeping them healthy. And she handles the bulk of the cloning as well with a little team that we'll be bringing on in hopefully May.
Now, are you from Pennsylvania originally, or how did you choose Berks County?
Yep, we both were born in Reading, Pennsylvania, and my sister's lived there all her life. And luckily, we have some farmland within the family, and that family was willing to let us build some greenhouses on it.
How did you choose the name Almanac Planting?
That took a long time to pick the name. We went through a lot of different iterations, and some are available. It had to do with what URL could we get, because we found a name we liked, and then we would find the URL wasn't available. And I don't know, we wanted to just have something that, like the Almanac Grower's Guide is just something you automatically think of if you're planting anything, and we just wanted to have a tie into that.
Who are you selling to? And what are sort of the purchase requirements?
Sure. We are selling to farmers. So, a lot of what we've been hearing in the past, people have been having trouble finding, reliable seed sources, or they end up with males in their field pollinating their crop, or just a whole bunch of varying phenotypes. So what we want to provide to farmers is a reliable plant. So, with a clone, you only get female plants and you get a single phenotype. So we're selling to growers big and small. One of the advantages in buying from us is that our minimum order quantity is only a single tray. So that's 72 plants in a tray. And a lot of, seed sources out there have very high minimum order quantities of, say, 10,000 seeds and up. And that can be prohibiting if you're a first time grower and you kind of don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Do you have concerns about like the compliance with these varieties that you're selling?
No, we don't. But luckily, I will say it was one of the struggles we faced in the fall was just the delay in the PDA getting their guidelines published. Mm-hmm. And luckily, we spent months researching genetics and deciding what varieties we were going to carry this year. And luckily, none of our varieties were on the blacklist that was published well after we had already decided what we were going to be growing. So that turned out good for us. But any high CBD content variety out on the market, it has the potential to test hot. So it's up to the grower, to do their research and test regularly once your plant starts to flower and harvest at the appropriate time. So I'm not worried about any of our varieties.
What else do you want farmers and potential customers to know about Almanac Planting?
I want them to know that we are here to help. So if you have questions about hemp, we're happy to take a phone call and talk to you and share our knowledge with you. And, we want to become a reliable, trusted resource. So we plan on being in this for the long haul. So it's important to us that the product we put out there is successful for the farmers growing it so that they come back again in the next season.
So farming sometimes feels like a good old boys club. How are you dealing with that?
We're just, being ourselves. So we're happy to talk to whomever. And, we haven't really had too many issues with that. The hardest part, I think, about getting into this was sort of the range of personalities you'll deal with in the hemp world. So you have kind of like the sort of people that are really focused on genetics and the science of it all and the varieties and they're very particular about that. And then you have the people that are more of the cannabis type of people, that are just a little bit more relaxed. And, I think when we were looking for our genetics, the hardest thing was finding someone we could trust.
Right. Yep. And it sounds like you did.
Yes.
So that's good.
Yes. Yeah. We're really happy.
And so what you said you were down in Tennessee?
Yeah. I ended up doing putting together a website for hemp growers in Tennessee, and through that spent a lot of time on their farm and watching how they do things, and that is where this initial idea just sparked from.
And you said time to move back to Pennsylvania and grow some hemp.
Yeah, pretty much.
Good. So obviously these are crazy times. We're in week 4 of the coronavirus shutdown here in Pennsylvania. How is that affecting you from a business perspective and from a personal perspective?
From a business perspective, one of the things we've done in response to the pandemic is to cut down our pricing. So we reduced our prices by 50 cents per clone. And hopefully this will help offset some of the initial investment needed to get started for growers. And it also helps us plan ahead. We're requesting pre-orders so that we're prepared to meet the demand come May. That's when we expect sales to really pick up. But, this pandemic is causing a lot of fear and anxiety and, suffering, pain, depression in everyone. I mean, it's very unpredictable. No one knows what's going to happen. But I do think that agriculture is here to stay, and I think CBD is here to stay. So I hope that the hemp industry will continue to grow and that people will be planting it this year.
Are you doing anything else at the greenhouse in regards to the pandemic?
Our houses are large, so luckily we don't have an issue with being too close together. And right now, we're able to do all of the work within our family. So no, we're not having any issues. Obviously, if people want to come by and see the varieties, we keep our distance, social distance 6 feet apart.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're happy to, put trays on the ground and let people load them themselves, or, whatever we can do to make people feel comfortable.
Are you growing anything else besides hemp in the greenhouses?
Yeah. So in response to this pandemic, and, we predict that there might be a rise in the Victory Garden in terms of people planting home gardens. It's certainly better to go outside in your own garden than take a trip to the grocery store these days.
Yeah.
So in response to that, we decided to plant some vegetables and herbs and fruit seedlings. And we put up a new website, Almanac Planting Co, where we're selling seed starts for the home garden. And, they're also available for pickup and local delivery and shipping. So, if we don't see the demand in hemp, then, hopefully we can help out in other ways and help people start their own gardens.
Great. Well, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
We are available either by email or phone, either way.
Okay. And your website too, almanacplanting.com?
Yep. So we've got almanachemp.com and almanacplanting.co for our garden starters.
Okay. And then is there a general email?
Yeah, it's Lindsay at almanacplanting.co.
There you go. Easy enough. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your operation up there? What part of Berks County are you in? Are you sort of in the western part of the county?
Yeah, it's our address is technically Richland, but people might recognize it more as a Bethel address. So we're in Tulpehocken Township.
Yeah. What else would you like to tell our audience about Almanac Planting?
One thing I didn't talk about is, and I don't even know if it's worth discussing, but if we don't sell as many clones as we're hoping to this year, a nice thing about this plant is that we can take it to flower in our greenhouses. So we're actually pretty excited. Even if, we do have great sales, we're still going to take all of our plants to flower and harvest smokable this year.
Okay.
So that's sort of a backup plan too, in response to the pandemic. If sales are, incredibly low, the good thing about this plan is we'll still have a crop to harvest.
All right. You'll be doing all indoor growing.
Yeah, exactly. Which is, there is a good demand for greenhouse grown smokable flower. It's just not as plentiful in the marketplace.
Do you think growers in Pennsylvania are at a disadvantage because there's so many other states that are staying with the 2014 rules?
Absolutely. I think that the guidelines are pretty strict, and I think that, people are probably a little bit more cautious this year about planting. Certainly the states like Tennessee and Vermont all have higher THC thresholds, so it alleviates, some of the stress of having to test regularly and harvest early. Mm-hmm. But it just depends on what your end goal is too. If you're harvesting for biomass, you have to plant a little bit more, to sort of get that same CBD content out. But if you're harvesting for smokable, it's a little bit more of an even playing field. So it kind of just depends on what your end goal is with the crop.
What's your plan for drying and trimming and all that stuff at your facility?
Yes, so we're still doing our research on the drying part of it, especially because of the humidity controls. So, people do dry in greenhouses, and we certainly have this. We would have the space for that, but we're looking into setting up an indoor room that is has the right humidity content and everything for that. So we have a couple more months to get that together, but and we're going to be doing hand trimming.
Lindsay Dawley, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Eric. It's been great.
Okay, that just about wraps it up for this week. Before I go, I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of one of America's greatest songwriters, a guy by the name of John Prine, who passed away yesterday due to complications from COVID-19. Thank you, John Prine, for all of the music and inspiration. I imagine there will be many nuggets of sad news in the coming weeks and months. On the bright side, I've been getting to spend a whole lot more time with my kids, who are home from school for the foreseeable future. I asked them how the quarantine is going for them, and they responded with a song that kind of sums it up.
Stuck inside these four walls, sent inside forever, never seeing no one nice again, but you, Mama,
Okay, thank you for listening. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online at lancasterfarming.com. Follow us on Instagram at LFPodcastHemp. And otherwise, be safe, be smart, wash your hands, take care of each other. We're all in this together, alone, together. So, okay. God bless. Episode 80 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2020 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock. The music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow, except for that little bit at the end with my kids singing a Paul McCartney song. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, kids.
Industrial hemp.